Well, here I am. Good afternoon, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Gosh, we have a wonderful show for y'all. I have my good friend, Mr. Matthew Mournian, here in the studio today. We are going to be talking about reptilians today. And if you will remember, we did cover them on Monday as well with our good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll. And today we are going to be talking about the neutral side, the positive to neutral side of some of the reptilian beings that we have that actually Matthew has been in contact with, and the ones that are working with humanity at this very moment right now. We're going to see what all's going on in that realm today. So this is going to be a really fantastic show. You guys buckle up, y'all, and get ready, because we're going down the multi-dimensional rabbit hole today, and you guys are going to love Matthew. He's great. We have done some conferences together, and he's a really cool guy, along with his beautiful wife Honora, and so you guys are in for a treat. Okay, so if you guys would like to follow along with all my shows and check out the archive of my shows and my calendar of events, please go over to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find everything over there. I've got more events to add to that calendar, and I just haven't done it yet, but I will. I have a bunch of Bigfoot events coming up. I think there's 2 in North Carolina coming up. And I don't know if they're still having the one down in South Georgia, but I will let you guys know. I'll put it all on my calendar of events on my website. But of course, we do have the full disclosure now coming up. That conference is going to be next month. Matthew will be there, and so will I. So y'all come see us at that. And I do have a discount code if you guys would like to get your tickets now. They say that some of the rooms, I think the discounted rooms, are dwindling. So if you guys are coming, please, and you want to stay at that hotel, I think it's the Serrata Beach Resort, y'all get your tickets and book your rooms now and use that discount code right there. You can find that on my website as well. Okay. Also, I do have a Patreon, and I have an Etsy shop. It's called War Woman Goods, if you guys would like to support the Cryptid Huntress over here. So thank you guys so much for all your support. And there is a new video up from this week over here on the YouTube exclusive members only tab. Okay, so if you guys are a member of the Hunt Club, go check that out. It's a funny one. It's a good one, actually. So y'all go check out the exclusive content in the members only videos down there. Okay, well, let's get to our show today, shall we? Okay, let me read the intro and introduce Matthew. Okay, so today we are discussing the positive to neutral reptilian beings that have been interacting with humans over the past several years to decades to centuries, actually. And Matthew Mournian, who's here with me today, he's been working with a group of reptilian beings from the Telescopium constellation, and he's going to tell us about how they are neutral and polarity. They have these connections with humanity. We're going to go down that rabbit hole today. I think this is really fantastic. And we are going to also talk about a group out of Peru of reptilian beings as well. And we've shown some pictures of those statues down there in Peru of some of these reptilian beings. We're going to get into that today as well. Matthew Mournian is a multi-dimensional energy healer and intuitive reader specializing in the clearing, balancing, and removal of negative energetic manifestations from the body. His current mission is to assist with healing the human body and our collective consciousness through the activation of the expanding multi-dimensional intuitive healing abilities that exist within each of us. He's a former addiction counselor, mental health professional, and his primary focus is on clearing the negative energy in our lives that block us from truly knowing ourselves and realizing our life's purpose. You guys can find him on his website. It is rememberyourmission.com. You can find him and his lovely wife over there and get their services there. Please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Matthew Mournian. Hey, Matthew.
Hey, greetings. Thank you for having me. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, I'm so good. I don't think we've actually done a show together before, Matthew. This is the first.
I think it is. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
This is the first. I was a little jealous. I think you and Barry had done a few shows together, and I was talking to Barry about that.
We have over the years. Yeah, we have. I hope he's doing well out there. But yeah. Thank you for inviting me over here.
Of course. Hey, shout out to Barry Littleton. Tomorrow is his birthday, y'all. Okay, so
cool.
Happy birthday to Barry. Happy early birthday, Barry, if you're listening by any chance. I was just messaging with him this morning.
Nice.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I threw in the multidimensional term before I brought you up today because I know you are we're both multidimensional beings. I know that we all are, right? But but you have your, I said, what did I say? A multidimensional rabbit hole today.
Oh yeah, really. That's kind of like where we are living currently, at least in my world. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Me too. What's up, Daryl? Hey, thank you for being here today in that chat. But yeah, you have a wonderful YouTube channel. I love tuning in. I've caught a few of them where you're doing like readings for people and things like that because you really tune into the psychic side of life, and that's my thing as well. And so I really appreciate that. And you offer some wonderful services to people when it comes to energy and entity attachments and Reiki healing and things like that. And that's something that we all need these days in these times.
I very, very much agree. And I will add one little piece to that. I think what we need on an even greater level is an environment in which people can learn to develop those skills for themselves rather than, rely upon figureheads or gatekeepers or false light disclosure celebrities, or the list goes on and on and on. I would like to think that's really the primary mission for me right now, is helping people figure out like, what are my abilities? What can I do? What power do I have? And it's very different for everyone. It's different for everyone. But if you're hearing my voice right now, and this is going out to everybody in the chat, you are living in a time on Earth in which you have a very distinct ability. And usually by the time people like me show up, it's like something's going to change with it. You know what I mean? Something will shift or grow. And so anyway, I'll stop there. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're here planting seeds within the collective consciousness, right, Matthew?
Very much so. I hope so.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I hope so. I mean, I learn something every single time I turn the camera on and we do a show with whoever is here with me. It does not matter. I always learn something new, and I just hope the audience is learning with me. And we are all activating each other. I do have the best live chat on the internet. I swear. I know that you've got a great one too over on your channel.
Yeah. What's up, everybody in the chat?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
What's up, you guys? Yes. I want to see a bunch of alien emojis. Like, just destroy the chat with alien emojis. Okay, you guys. Anyway, go ahead.
I love that. Well, usually during the daytime show, they put in food. Okay.
Oh, cool.
I've noticed people they're hungry, and so everybody's putting in what they're eating for lunch.
Yeah, okay? I'm also hungry as well. I'm on a weird diet now, so I'm like, yeah, I feel you on that one. Yeah.
Oh, and I didn't eat breakfast this morning, y'all, so I'm hungry too.
Okay, right? But, I feel you. No, it's all good. But
I had 1 cup of coffee, and that was pretty good. Tacta Squatch. Okay.
There you go.
I had Bigfoot coffee this morning.
Hell yeah.
But why not? I know, right? But we're not here to talk about coffee. We're here to talk about reptilians today. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have been covering reptilians. I've been looking into the reptilian empire, and I actually just got this book in the mail. What is this? Project Serpo, on Project Serpo.
Yeah. That's
have you read this?
Yes, I have. I read it years ago. I still have it. It is excellent. Yeah.
This is a good book. I've only just started it.
Yeah, I think that's Len Kasten's
Len
book.
Kasten. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know if he's still alive, but if he is, good job, Len.
Yeah. It's a great book, but I mean, I'm really into it right now because I'm really learning about. I mean, I did a show the other day on glitch outs. Okay, like newscasters glitching out, and Barry came on the show last week with me, and we talked about the liquid crystal mask and things that some we used to call them shapeshifters, but it's just like a holographic type of coverings and stuff that they say it, and I'm not going to say it's just reptilians, it's any kind of alien, like alien species, I guess, like trying to kind of fit in and pretend to be human.
Totally. The bio digital overlay, at least that's what it's been referred to as, by other people I've met, the bio digital overlay, but
is that what that is? I love that. Okay. Well, we're seeing all these glitch outs, and I've noticed today my internet speed has gotten really slow because my son plays PS5 all the time now, and so it looks like if I'm looking like I'm glitching out, y'all, it's because my internet connection is slow. I'm not changing. Okay, I'm not changing. I'm not shifting.
Shifting is not occurring. Sorry if this is a weird question, but what games has he been playing? I'm just curious.
Fortnite.
Oh yeah, okay.
Fortnite. He's a kid, and I don't know. I don't even know if that's a kid's game, but they're dance. They have dance offs and stuff. It's so weird. He's like, I gotta go have this dance off before I go murk some folks or something.
Right?
I was like,
no,
okay,
totally,
great.
man. I get it.
Yeah.
I fully understand that world, by the way. Maybe a bit more so than this one, which is not always a good thing, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I played Duck Hunt and Excite Bite when I was his age.
I remember those. I remember when the Atari, what was it, like 2600 came out, and it was just a blip on the screen, and we were like,
yeah,
what? Oh my God, this is amazing. No, because it was at the time, right? It very much was.
Yeah, Super Mario and all that, Mario Brothers. So yeah, he'll never know the excitement of Atari and things like that. Well, we've got an Atari too, but anyways, yeah, he's into all that. So, but I am not glitching out, y'all. I'm glitching out, but it's not because I'm a reptilian or anything.
I might be glitching out just for the hell of it.
Dang, I know, right?
Just because we can't. No, not really. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to tell you. Okay, so when I was up in Montauk last year, or about a year and a half ago, went to Montauk with Brian Sang and James Rink and that whole crowd, a bunch of secret space program survivors up there, and we had a really cool. We spent a whole week up there. And at some point, one of our friends who came down to see me at a Bigfoot conference recently. I guess James or somebody had taken a picture of him, and his eyes had turned to slits in this picture. And I thought that was really, and he showed it to me, and he's always said, I think I may be like Draco or Draco Reptilian potentially. And but that picture pretty much sealed the deal, in my opinion. I think that there's definitely something different about his eyes. I'm not going to say who it is. Okay. But he definitely, he said that he was unaware of it until somebody pointed it out in a picture that his eyes had shifted. And so I guess I'm only saying that to kind of segue into what we're talking about today, because it could be anybody, right? There's a lot of people that may have this lineage, and we just don't know it. Am I on the right path here? Or
I believe that, man. Well, I mean, if you want to get technical and anatomical, each and every one of us has that, reptilian brain within us, which will, link us to those kind of, what if you want to call it that, more primal elements of existing life within our universe. And I too have also seen a number of people that have kind of flashed some form of like reptilian eye thing over the years. I think that most of the times when I've seen the ones on like YouTube, and it's this like JPEG artifact, like digital like video crap thing, and it's like, look, they have a reptilian eye. It's like, no, man, it's just a really shitty video. You will see a lot of that, but what I've encountered, I would say most of the time, is an image that will appear within the mind's eye. And I think that for a lot of people that might encounter like the shades or the elements or frequencies of these beings that are literally walking the earth alongside us in a different frequency, I think in most cases, you will often perceive them within the mind's eye versus like, suddenly someone's eyes turn reptilian. But I have also met a number of people in this world who have embodied those beings and those energies on such a level that it shows in their face and in their body. And anyway, I could get into a few stories on that if you want, but yeah, it's a literally real thing. And anyway, yeah, watch out, because I'll talk forever.
No, it is. No, I love that. Listen, that's all I do is talk, Matthew. Okay. So I can really appreciate that, because, we do talk about like the screen memories and things that can be that we see, like when we have like an abduction experience or something like that. Or, you know, if you just, I mean, I've had up close and personal contact with ETs before, at least twice that I can remember.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will have a contact with ETs and they remember seeing like a deer, an owl, something else happen, you know, like wake up and there's clowns in my room, like dolls. And I mean, those were dolls, of course, but I mean, what if they weren't at some point? I know that sounds kind of odd and weird, but
I think that's very authentic. The higher self will allow us to visually perceive things through the lens at which we are able, meaning that it's like if you have no concept or no ability to really like perceive or understand those things, in some cases they'll show up as, you know, strange little elves. I was deeply connected to a person years ago who I knew was having some kind of extraterrestrial out of body experiences, and, you know, if you want to call them abductions and whatnot. And they were like, but they're not aliens, they're these little elves that come in my room. And I'm like,
oh,
maybe it's also some elf beings. But I think that's a thing that's been referenced widely over the years, you know, for those of us that have studied and like been immersed in these areas of, you know, whatever's been going on. It's very common. They'll show up in a number of different forms.
Oh yeah, Matthew. So Saturday night, I had a guy, my buddy named Trebles came on the show, and he's got a podcast called Paranoid Radio, and he came on to talk about his personal encounter when he was younger of an elf in his bedroom. And I did not mention this at the time because I just knew we were going to go down a totally different rabbit hole if I had mentioned that. That I think it was probably a screen memory, and it might have been an alien. Okay. Yeah, because very, you know, it was very much a duende, you know, as he called it, and some sort of like a little tiny human. He said it was about this big, tiny.
Yeah.
And it was jumping across his laundry in his dresser in his bedroom, and it actually other people in his family had seen them too.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought that was interesting, and I thought, well, okay, they probably were having like alien abductions maybe, but I don't know. There's also duendes.
Yeah.
Too. So that, you know. Yeah. So I don't know, but I love that. I literally was thinking that in my head while he was talking about it, and I was like, should I say it? Should I say it? No.
Yes.
But anyways, but I said it now. So Trebles, you might have been abducted, buddy. I don't know. But we'll talk about that on the next time he comes on the show. Okay, it'll be another topic for us. But it's very interesting. And I love this comment from Cryptidville. Cryptidville says, the blue light has us hypnotized to only see certain things.
Actually, that's a very good statement. If I can just comment on that. That was the first form in which I was able to experience what I believe to be a multidimensional out of body and experience as a child. And I was one of those people that literally a blue light would come into my room when I was going to bed at not every night, but in many different scenarios. It was like this little blue light would come in and like hover around my room. And I was maybe, I don't know, like 5 or 6. It's, you know what I mean? Early childhood, you know, memory. And it would come boom, right to the tip of my nose. And then I would just wake up and it would be the very next day. And there was one time where the little blue light came in, went to the tip of my nose, and I woke up and I was in a whole different place. And so it's interesting just to see the synchronicity of that comment, because I had heard of other people having similar experiences as children. I mean, we can go off on that whole timeline if you want, but I think for me that was the initial kind of experiential gateway into understanding as a child that there was something very, very peculiar, something unusual, or I guess if you want to use the word multidimensional, that I had come in with, which let's be real, is not always a good thing, okay? Because for those of you guys in the chat that have had certain experiences, you'll know there is no infrastructure in our modern world to identify, to foster, to help those that have had those experiences understand more about them, to build upon it and like understand, well, what does this actually symbolize and what does it mean in my world? And so for me at the time, it was just a thing that happened as a kid. And, you know, the last time it happened was probably the most traumatic one of it all. But it was weird. And I guess to kind of branch into the subject of reptilian context, I think the first thing that I would want to say about it is because I hear a lot of people on many shows, yours, you know, even, you know, the shows that I do, all all over our, multidimensional community, if you want to call it that. I believe that there's so much misconception about the nature of flesh and blood reptilian beings. And I'm not on any level an authority. I'm not a representative. I'm merely an experiencer. And one of the things that happened for me very early on, when I first started going public with a lot of these things and just talking about things that had happened over my life, was that I learned that they did not fit in with what other people were selling. It did not fit in with the ultra, like, the super cool super soldier, SSP world, where they're like, yeah, I'm out there battling reptilians and ripping their heads off, and I'm in this war with them. And I was like, if you'd ever actually been face to face with one, no living person would ever say that.
Yeah.
No one would. And I stand behind that statement to this very day. And anyway, before I rant on and on, if you have any questions or comments on that, but yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm learning too, is like everything that we've been told or we thought. First of all, I mean, I just went down the rabbit hole before we started the show today of this guy's on YouTube called My Lunch Break, and he's putting out all these videos of like our hidden history and just doing so much deep diving into this research of like our hidden history and things that we've been lied to about with our architecture and our civilizations that have been here before. It's mind blowing, and it honestly, it pisses me off a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of does, because it's coming to a boiling point with me. Okay. It's like there's so much that we've been lied to about. And I know that, like, I have touched on this many times. I'm just getting irritated with all the cover-ups and the secret societies and things like that, that are allowing all this and being the gatekeepers to a lot of our real true information. And we're kind of told who the villains are. And we're told who the good guys are, and it's all a matter of perspective and things like that. And I think that it's time that we get outside that box. You know what I mean?
I hope so. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, yeah, I love it that you've got a whole different perspective than the things that we are kind of fed. I'm going to say fed.
Well, it's not so much to say that it's not true. And for those in the chat, what am I referencing? Really, I think that there's so many forms in which extraterrestrial or non-physical life forms will present themselves to us in this human journey, that it's really up to the interpretation of the experiencer to understand the specific symbolism and the meanings behind it. I can tell you that, while I had a number of what I believe to be extraterrestrial experiences, maybe as a child, it really did not kick in for me until right before I turned age 40. And it's interesting to note, for those of you guys out there that know, maybe a fragment of my story, which is probably like 2 or 3 people in the chat, will have heard about that. But I did not know that my, if you want to call it mission or assignment, or if you want to use the old word career, if you wanted to use that one, in this life was to be a professional psychic. I had no idea that I had an ability to view or perceive or even work with such energies until right around, I would say around age 38 was when really, really strange things began to occur in my life. I talk about it in a book that I put out last year, which you guys can find on Amazon if you choose to look for it. But I had such an expansive and honestly kind of traumatic Kundalini and awakening experience at the age of 38 that it fundamentally blew open what I believe to be the energetic circuits and the pathways within the body. And that was it was July of 2015. I'm like, whoa, dates. Oh my God. Anyway, but shortly after that experience, a host of many different things started showing up in my world. And please feel free to stop me if I talk on too long here. But it actually began with just a series of beings that would show up in my room, as I was waking up in the night, or I would wake up in the morning, and I would be, which is still to this day hard to describe, I would be coming through a portal in my ceiling, like this shimmering blue, watery green liquid portal that I would watch myself descend down, back into my physical body. And at that time period of my life, I didn't even know what a portal was. I knew about the video game, Portal 2, which I was like, oh, you mean like that game? And it was sort of like that. But to fast forward within that experience, after I would say about 2 years of really struggling to make sense of it all, I was I was blessed to meet people that helped me launch into doing this work full time. And one of the things that I discovered in the very beginning with people that would come in to meet me was that they did legitimately have what I believe to be certain types of beings attached to their energy field. And in most cases, it was what I believe to be, you know, sort of like parasitic, or this is such a widely used term that everyone has a different meaning on it, archontic types of beings, you know, in some cases people will perceive them as demonic. But one thing that I didn't spot a lot was honestly reptilians. And I was coming into awareness of a lot of the, you know, the secret space program trends and the disclosure stuff. And there, time and time again, I would be told, well, these are the negative, you know, owners of the earth. These are the people that are, you know, destroying everything. These are the ones that are, you know, taking and eating your children. I was like, okay, I'm willing to believe that. Absolutely to believe that. But at that time in my life, they weren't showing up in that way until I would say about 2018, where I would think the first reptilian encounter that I had was actually through a client that I was doing an energy clearing with. And it was a very, very particular, it was a male, and he was a guy that had been involved in a lot of the dark underbelly of SRA. I don't know if we can say the full words on YouTube without smacked.
I think people know what SRA is.
Okay, yeah. So he had been involved in a bunch of child rituals, and what I had perceived within his field, and it was right over the shoulder, literally right over the left-hand shoulder, was this smoky gray demonic looking being that was literally like an ancient dragon. And for the very first time that I encountered such a thing, it shot a sense of fear and despair, and just, it was like this injection of truly ugly, miserable energy that came into my body all the way. It was so strong that I sounds silly. Somebody's going to cringe. Get ready, all the cringers out there. I almost urinated on myself in that moment. It's like it had this ability to turn everything up inside me. And I was like, oof. And I had to like sit there and hold on. And it was a bizarre experience. And, you know, fast forward about a year later, I had met another client who had, you know, had actually been in contact with what she believed to be a group of reptilians that were essentially living as hybrids on planet Earth. And it's a very long story. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but her whole mission at the time was understanding how they had such incredible influence upon her. And what she learned during her time of contact with them was that these were earthbound hybrid beings, and they would wear this little thing around their neck. And some of you guys are going to get the synchronistic, you know, like relationships here, but it was a black cube. They would wear this little black cube thing around their neck like a little necklace, and they claimed that that black cube would allow them to be perceived as humans, where in reality they were very, very smooth skinned. They weren't very dinosaur like, but they were this very smooth kind of reptilian, more serpentine type of race of beings. And the reason why I'm mentioning that here is because that was probably the second time in which, as soon as it was mentioned, boom, actually somewhat similar to what we're seeing on the screen here, maybe a little bit more refined in certain ways, but that's actually a very good, that's a pretty close image. But it was, you know, just like in another session, it had shown up over the shoulder of this woman, and that was the first time I think I'd ever had any form of a dialogue with this being. It was very much letting me know, and you know, it's not like we spoke like, hey, what's up, bro, what are you doing here? It wasn't like that. It's like a transmission of, you know, energy that moves through the mind and the body. And he was very particular about letting me know there's nothing that you can do to remove me from this woman's life. In fact, we've been together for centuries, and we will be together for centuries after that. And it was almost like it allowed me to, you know, be a part of whatever was happening, you know, with them, solely for the purpose of helping her understand that it was real. And it's crazy because she didn't actually want to get cleared of it. She didn't want it out of her life. It was more to process this and say, is this thing even real? And so those were the first two times that I had encountered that energy. And anyway, there was a major one a year later, which we can get into in a second, but I don't want to overtalk everything.
Yeah. No. Okay, you brought up the black cube. That is so interesting. And I know there's so much so many rabbit holes to go down with the black cube. And actually, the cube is a shape that Barry Littleton, Barry's in the chat. What's up, Barry? We just told you happy birthday before you came in here. Barry's in here, but that's how he and I kind of bonded when we first met, because I had talked about the cube that showed up in the field where we had, we call it the portal. Okay, out in at the meadow where my team does Bigfoot and paranormal cryptid field research and stuff, and the two gentlemen walked inside of it and came out. They disappeared. Their heat signatures disappeared, and they came out and reappeared and all that stuff. And so, and Barry had some pictures that he was showing at that. We were at Camp Disclosure in Georgia when we met, and I don't remember. You might have been there, but I don't remember.
I think so. I think I was at the first two Camp Disclosures. Yeah,
you were there. I remember you and Anoran rode in my car. Remember, I drove y'all back.
Oh, yeah.
And, we were doing that didgeridoo.
Yes, I definitely.
Remember that.
Maybe we won't get into that here.
We're not going to get into that one today.
I'll just say it got really weird at this conference between some people, you guys who are watching, and we were like,
let's get out of here.
Yeah. Maybe
that was funny. That's how I met you guys, actually. Yes. I feel like we bonded over that. That was weird.
Yeah, it was strange.
It was very odd. So
that's how it is out there.
It always gets weird in the mountains, y'all. But anyways, so Barry had some pictures on some drawings from some experiences he had of like a cube that was, I think it was kind of like power. It was either a portaling device or some kind of powering device in one of the crafts that he had been in. And so we really got into this cube talk. And we covered it over and over again, just in different ways. And so it comes up a lot. And so that's interesting because the way that we interpret it as a team with my field research team was like the cube is a device to portal through. Okay. So we don't know anything. Okay. We're just trying to make sense of it. So I think that's really cool.
It seems as though the cube-like form takes many different functions, whether it be as a piece of technology, whether it be as a gateway or a portal of sorts, or even just what we would call one of the inorganic pieces of astral or, multi-dimensional, just tech or even like a life form in and of itself. I think that I've heard so many stories and accounts of them showing up and having, in certain cases, many different functions and purposes. And everyone's very probably aware of the black cube tech here on Earth, in their own way through like religions and cultures, and even the cube on Saturn, which I'm gonna be real, I know this is probably too much of a can of worms. I don't really think the black cube on Saturn is controlling the entirety of our human matrix. I don't think it's that. I honestly don't think it's that powerful, but I think it is a major player in terms of how we perceive the layers of reality, which is why it was very shocking to me when I had encountered this person who I'd done the session with, and her first thing was like, look, they have a black cube that they wear around their neck, and it allows them to change their faces into different beings. And it's just crazy to see how it would show up through all these different forms. And so anyway.
Oh, wow. I mean, ooh, okay. Well, what if that's what the news broadcasters are wearing? They're wearing a little cube somewhere and their faces are changing on screen. So
that would be cool if that was true.
Or
like maybe not. It kind of, like, it
I don't
depends
know
on who you follow. Yeah.
Hey, I just want the truth. I can handle the truth. I think I can handle the truth at this point. I think we all can.
We definitely can.
Yeah. The girl in the Bronx. Thank you, Maureen, for that super sticker. That's so sweet. Much love to you and Gus as well. We appreciate y'all so much. And we have a lot of comments about the cubes in here in the chat right now. And
feel free if you guys have questions, let me know. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, everybody's talking about the Lacertophiles. Okay, and that's kind of what that dinosaur person looks. Yeah. They call it the dinosaurid. Actually, do you guys want to see it? Let me pull this website up real quick, and I'm going to show everybody. That picture that I just showed came from this. There's a scientist. Hold on one second. Let me get this up. Humanoid dinosaurs revisited again. All right, let's pull this up. And humanoid dinosaurs revisited again. Russell and Seguin, I guess, dinosaurid, around 40 years old. I mean, look at that. It looks like an ET, right? It looks like just the size of it looks very much like, and that's what humans would look like had we evolved from dinosaurs.
I can see that. To me, this being that's shown here feels more like a hybrid of a couple different races, which I'm not really familiar with all the files and all the information behind it. Although I do remember it coming out years ago and kind of reading through it, but it feels very, very like incredibly real. And I know everyone knows this by now, but our Earth, like the inner Earth, factions of all these sorts of beings are just crawling, absolutely crawling with so many different forms of hybrid reptilian beings, hybrids of earth-based animals that we see here. And I know you talk about like the dog man and the dog beings, the Sasquatch, all of those guys. They're I mean, it's through my experience, and I can only speak through my own experience because I know depending on who you follow and how many followers you have in this day and age, that's going to gauge how much people believe what you're saying, right? So I have a very small amount of that, and all I can do is talk about what I've experienced. But I think for me, the reason why I choose to treat reptilian energies on our Earth with the utmost respect, with absolute respect, I think for me, came about from an experience that I had right at the beginning, or maybe late summer, I want to say 2020, when we were in the height of, the viral madness, which I don't even know. Can we say that on YouTube now?
I mean, I don't know. We say whatever over here these days. Yeah.
Like word. Right. In the height of the viral madness that was overtaking us during that stage of 2020, I was living in the Miracle Mile neighborhood of Greater Los Angeles, California. For those of you guys that are familiar with the La Brea tar pits, I was very, very close. The reason why I mentioned those is because that's well regarded as a place where there's a vast underground network. There's openings into what many people call the underbelly of LA in there. And what's crazy is during the time we lived there, we actually saw them redigging and hollowing out other areas underneath the ground. You could just walk by and see the tunnels underneath Los Angeles for a while. You could look, I swear to God, you could look directly into them. Me and my wife did it constantly. We would walk down the street and like stick our head through these little slats in this like construction zone, and you could see this massive network of stuff that they were digging down there. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I think the experience that really caused me to reframe what I understood about these beings came about in late 2020, where and this is going to sound, once again, really cheesy and cringe to some people. I've never been a person that does, rituals or try to get into this mindset where I'm like, we're going to make contact. You know what I mean? I've never been that person. And in fact, there's been times when I tried to be that person and it just didn't work. You know what I mean? Or I would take a bunch of like mushrooms or LSD and be like, I'm going to meet aliens. And it's still it didn't happen. You know what I mean? If it did, trust me, I'd be selling it and, suddenly I'll be in a program, you know what I mean? But we weren't. And so what happened for me at that stage is literally one night I did a meditation in the midst of all this stuff that was going on. I remember laying back on my bed and closing my eyes, and within seconds of closing my eyes, I opened them again and I was in a very, very different place. And before I describe it, I will mention to everyone that's watching, I use a very particular type of telepathic image kind of transmission. And if you choose, you can look directly at the left eye. This is universal for most people until you encounter one that has the right eye transmission. But you can look directly into a person's eyes. And if you allow yourself, you will receive what I call an internal slideshow of images. And it's probably be really easy for you because you do so much remote viewing. But what had happened to me that night is I had woken up instantly from this meditation and I was in a very different place. And I can only describe it as what we would call like a cylindrical kind of dwelling space, meaning like this huge kind of golden metallic light cylinder came over me, almost like a big tube, maybe like a missile silo, if you want to get a different image of it. And what I could see in it was these like hexagonal type of like shape openings that were all lining the sides of it, a little bit like a beehive, if you want to get kind of technical, but it wasn't like an organic thing. It was like constructed of some type of, I don't know, material. And within that space, I think the first thing that I recall was that, it was as if all of this is important to mention for people that I think that have encountered true reptilian beings. There was a force of power that came over me that was so distinct and absolutely immeasurable that I could not think a thought. I could not have an emotion other than fear. I could not move my body. The only thing I could feel was the beating of my heart, which had kind of been ramped up to this level where for a few moments I was like, am I having a heart attack? Am I dying? What? Just what is happening? I was like frozen there in this placement, and it almost like descended downward, but it was more like it materialized in front of me. And this is kind of why I launched into that, because what it was very much like a dinosaur type being. In looking at it now, I would call it like one of the members of this ancient race of, if you want to call them Draco or dragon beings or just ancient reptilians, and very, very sandy in color, kind of, like a mix between a dinosaur and an iguana. You could see rich texture and all kinds of markings on its body. It was crazy. It was actually wearing some type of like I don't know what it was. It was some type of like a robe. And anyway, within that moment, I will pause in a second here. As this being showed up, well, the first thing I noticed about it is that its eyes were changing shape constantly. It was like forming in and out, almost like a kaleidoscope of sorts. And as its eyes would change shape, it was almost like certain parts of my body would move. And what I was basically subjected to, which once again, it's a cringe thing for people out there that have a hard or a closed crown chakra or a difficult time perceiving these things as being real. What it was doing was examining me. Literally, it's like it flipped me over like a dolphin that they pulled out of the water and was just like moving me around and like, like examining the body. And I wish I could say that it was not traumatic. I'm not saying it was or it wasn't, but I was very aware of the fact that I could not even think. I could not ask a question. I could not control anything that was happening until right around this moment in which it flipped me around and brought me directly up to its face, like face to face with this being. And honestly, it was a sense of fear that I don't really know how to understand. I don't understand how to really explain it to people. But in the midst of its eyes changing shape and doing all these crazy things, it's almost like I was allowed to have a thought, which sounds crazy to some people. It was like, and my thought was, is this real? What is happening? And this being, without me choosing to do so, sent this message into my body. And it was like, is this real? Touch me and tell me if I'm real. And at that moment, I watched my left hand reach out. I say I watched because it wasn't a choice. It wasn't like me going, yeah, I'm going to touch this dude. It was literally like, I could just feel my hand go up and touch him. And in the moment that I touched the side of like the lower part of this being's face, such a crazy thing happened. I realized that he had an ability to basically move into my thoughts. And what I was shown was this, like, it was like a fire hose moment of all these experiences and things that had occurred for me and traumas and like negativity. And just, it's like every single bit of my human experience was taken out of my body and downloaded into this being, as if he was flipping channels on a TV, just going through, looking for something over and over again. I will pause right after this. And in the midst of that, I was also shown its world and some of the things and the elements of its kind of tribes and all that. Anyway, I could go on and on, but just if you want to comment or ask.
Okay. So that's interesting that you've experienced that, because I too have had an experience that's kind of similar a little bit. Now, I can't say it was a reptilian, but it was some form of an extraterrestrial. While we were out in the field doing our Bigfoot field research, and I was hiding out, all dressed in camo and hiding out and trying to get a Bigfoot to step on me. We encountered an orb and a UFO, like a craft, a triangular craft that flew low flying over my partner and I out in the field. And through remote viewing, we didn't know what happened. We just knew there was a lot of missing time and things. And some of the top remote viewers on our team, this is before I was taught remote viewing, by the way, some of the top remote viewers, those guys, they went in and did a remote viewing of what happened to us out there. And it turned out that we too were examined by whatever was in that craft. Wow. And actually holograms came out over our heads. And they did like they didn't like take our clothes off and like do an examination. Not that I know of. If they did, the guys didn't tell me. Okay. They needed me to keep my sanity, so I'd go back out there one day. Okay. But they said, from what I was told, that it was just a hologram. came out with a lot of information and stuff on us because it was detecting us in the environment, but it couldn't really find us. But I guess our heat gave it away, and it came over, and it was just like you said, like flipping through like a TV channel or something. And we're just going through like, let's get her data.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And find out who that is. Okay. Well, okay. They're fine. They're no threat. Apparently. Yeah. Or they're here on mission. they're doing something. Leave them alone. They're friendlies. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. It was like a very similar thing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, I'm done. I'm just trying to, I like connecting dots kind of. And I think that's interesting that the examinations, the almost like holographic kind of stuff. And just examining us.
It's funny that you would even mention the holograms, and because that was actually an element of that experience. In the moments in which it was viewing or kind of sifting through what I believe to be my memories and my timelines, I was also granted a view of its world, and there was numerous casts, there was numerous beings involved. This is a planet of literal flesh and blood reptilian beings that are very aware of, they're very aware of Earth, they're very aware of humans. They're also, I think, very aware of some of the biological and energetic changes that we are going through as a race. And I think they have maybe some good intentions, some bad intentions. Some people out there will be like, no, they're not. They're pure evil. And, that's a conversation we can have later. But
demonic, I hear demonic a lot. That's the buzzword kind of.
Yeah, let me just mention this now, you guys. For those of you guys out there that are doing spiritual work or coming into an understanding of those things, it's very important for you to understand that no demon is ever going to present itself in your world in a demonic form. It just will not. No human being with a human soul, with the higher self, like connection, is going to choose to say, here's the most fearsome and ugly and dark thing that I've ever encountered. I'll just do what it says. They'll show up as angels, as beings of light. They will show up
as your husband or wife.
Right. No, exactly.
That's what happened in my life.
In the behaviors and the mannerisms of humans as elements of the shadow self. That is where demonic energies tend to be attracted. That's where they operate. It is not in the form of a disembodied being that will show up. In fact, a lot of demonic energies will only exist as what we would call a frequency. It's a frequency that your body and your consciousness turns to. Now, I know there's millions of people that'll come on this show, another one, and say, no, it's not. That's not how it works. And that's totally cool. I'm only talking through my experience. But to get back to the kind of holographic element of it, one of the things that I was shown within this race of beings was that that's literally what they do. And they would sit within these circles in these areas, and they would meditate, and they would bring up certain objects, and they would levitate into the air. And within that moment, it was like a holographic screen would open up. And it sounds cheesy, only from our human mindset can we say this, but it was like they're just watching TV, like flipping through channels. And within that experience that I had with that being, I believe I was intended to see it. It showed me literally in my house, in my weird little apartment, like almost like they found my channel and they were like, okay. And so, there was some form of an encounter that occurred, but sure, I could talk a lot more about that. There was a couple of others, but the reason why I mentioned that one and the reason why it was shown up in the book that I wrote is because I believe that it fundamentally changed me. Coming back from that experience, I was changed in some way. I don't believe that I was traumatized by it, but honestly, I've never been the same since. And I'm not like super pro reptilian. I'm not like a big advocate of them. I choose to have, respect for all of the races that are interacting with us. But I mean, I believe it activated some element of DNA within my body that allowed me to maybe like I want to say that was in 2020. I think the next time I encountered one of those beings was, I think, 2021 or maybe even 2023. And to make the story, even make a long story, shorter and more random, later on, I became intimately aware of the beings that you mentioned at the start of our show, which is a collective that still exists in the underground caverns, at least through my understanding, underneath South America. And they've been called by humans Morrop, which, I'm once again not a representative of them. But what I can tell you is that that's not their name. It's actually more referring to the land or the time in which these beings walked on the surface of the earth. And I do believe I was in contact with the being or a member of the tribe that you see on the screen here. And so this is a place out in Chiclayo, Peru, for those of you guys that are not familiar with it. And there's numerous statues of a bunch of different mythical beings out there, and it's called the capital of friendship. It's still called the capital of friendship. And so during just the experiences that I was having, I believe that I was taken into those caverns to meet these very beings who have a role on our earth to this very day when it comes to the shamanic gateways and the portals that are open through acts of ritual death. One of the things that these beings were doing at the time was they were not only teaching humans how to open those portals, but they were also teaching people how to close the ones that were causing damage. And it was because, at least what I was shown by these beings, at that stage in which we were encountering them as flesh and blood beings here on the earth plane, it was because they had been banished here. They had been trapped here through, I don't understand, the details around that, but they had begun to hybridize themselves with other inner earth reptilian beings. And what that led to was a little bit of, we could call a settling or a calming or an integration of some of the more fierce elements of them. And they actually made a choice to start working alongside humans. But and anyway, I can get into how I got into their realm if you want, but I don't want to overtalk.
Yeah. No, I would love that. No, I was really interested in like how you first made contact with these beings. And yeah, let's talk about it. Tell us.
Yeah. So I would say the first contacts were the ones that I had through clients that I was working with. Those were the first stages in my life where I had actually seen what I would call a shape or a form or an apparition of a reptilian being within my mind's eye. And it was too distinct. It was too powerful. There's a sickness that comes with it. There's a mindset that changes. There's so much that goes on biologically inside your body that I knew that even if it wasn't what they appeared to be, it was something beyond anything that I had ever encountered. Because it's like the feeling stays with you. I mean, sometimes for weeks, I mean, months. I mean, for me, it's like it's a thing that has persisted in my life ever since. But the way that I came in contact with what I believe to be the inner earth reptilian beings came through a couple different people. One of them I always choose to mention with respect and reverence, a man named Anthony of the YouTube channel Canadian Awareness, who I believe to be one of the very few true reptilian representatives, or just I guess maybe you could call it a representative, an expert in a way that I had not met anyone that was able to describe their world. And upon meeting this man, he essentially was opened a gateway, I think, for me within the body, within the mind's eye. It also came about through a QHHT session that I talk about in the book I wrote, but he could spot them instantly without ever meeting me or having any words with me. This man came up to me at the Conscious Life Expo conference in Los Angeles, California, and was like, "Hey, you have a number of reptilian beings around you that have been working with you that have very, very interested in you." And I was like, what? How could you? What's interesting that you would say that, because over the past couple of years I had a few weird experiences. And so I would say the gateway into making contact with the Peruvian inner earth reptilians came ultimately through Anthony of that channel. But what happened after meeting him was that I would literally wake up in the morning with a word in my head, or I would close my eyes and I would go into almost like this automatic like meditation space where I would encounter these beings. And the first time I was able to, I think, reach into their realm was coincidentally the first time I was ever able to actually meditate upon them. And what I was shown was what I believe to be that area in Peru where they have the statues. And although like in the old days, it was a very different place, obviously. But as I was led through this cavern, I came upon what I believe to be a gateway or a blockage point. And I think this is important because one of the reasons why I think I was allowed in there was because of the experience that I had in 2020 with that other reptilian being that opened up a piece of DNA within my body that allowed me to safely perceive or just maybe in some cases stand alongside those energies. But what I was shown, this vast network of tunnels in which, beings would meditate and they would, open up these gateways. And when I finally was able to enter the realm, this is a fun one for those of you guys working with internal images. What I was brought to was what looked like a planet, a mini planet underground inside our planet. And it was like this seething black mass of crocodilian and reptilian, kind of like alligator type beings, like 3D type of beings, like sort of like the ones we see in like swamps, and they were like thrashing around the surface of this black planet. And as I approached it in my mind, I was shown those who breach into this realm will be eviscerated by this layer. Only those that are allowed to pass through it can come to the stage that you are at. And it wasn't a choice that I made to go through it, but I passed right through it. And what I noticed, the first thing I saw was that it was very much like the initial experience, because it was like they had these hive structures. Only as I was passing into this sort of gateway of these thrashing beings that were kind of, it was as if they were living within a black ocean on the outside of a mini planet in the inner Earth. It was like self-like contained world under there, which sounds crazy. There's going to be some people out there that are like, oh yeah, whatever. Anyway, but as I entered in that, I saw once again hive structures. I thought it was like a tangle of like overgrowth or this bush that I had moved into, but it was like these organic hive structures. And as I passed through these gateways, I was brought into this area in which there was essentially what I believe to be a series of altars, or these massive statues, just like you had shown on the screen, of what I believe to be Egyptian gods, just deities that had been worshipped, throughout many different eras. Somewhat similar to what you see here. Maybe, there's always a few changes, within the face and things. But what's wild is during that experience, I was with a group of people, and I do not know who these people were, but they were humans. They were other people. Because I heard their languages. It was like other world languages, and people were talking as if like we were on this sort of tour. And anyway, what they showed me, to make the long story really, really short, was that some of the beings that are existing on our planet, they're attempting to create or integrate with humans to allow us to come to a different stage of understanding of the many forms of life that exist around us. And they showed me how they had been working with us for ages. And one of the things that was confirmed to me at that time was that I had carried a piece of them from the time in which I had lived within their sort of timelines. And anyway, to go even farther and leave a bunch of things out, what I was shown later on was that they are from a real living actual constellation, and everyone here can look it up right now. You can get, you can open up a new thing on your phone or your computer and look up the Telescopium constellation. Telescopium was identified, and that was the word that I was given. It was also confirmed by the gentleman that I had talked about, but which is honestly one of the things that I think makes his information unique, was that he was able to pinpoint, like, this is the beings you're working with and this is where they're from. And there was a confirmation, because as soon as I was given that information, I began to have experiences with them. And so anyway, to make it even shorter, they're part of a group of flesh and blood reptilians that share certain DNA fragments on a greater level with earthbound humans. They do have a lot of concerns about us right now, because one of the overall plans for the future is that they will show up here on Earth. Right now, they're living on what we would call a separate physical timeline, although they're a flesh and blood race. Meaning that if you took like a little NASA ship or a SSP ship out there to Telescopium, you might not find a flesh and blood planet of reptilian beings. But if you are able to enter what we call the fourth density state of non-physical existence, you will find a vast, vast community. And I know that within 3 of the planets within the Telescopium constellation are inhabited by different races of hybrid reptilian beings. And so what they had showed me was that I was, and this is also one of those things that's so cringe for some people, because if the wrong person says this, it sounds like an ego game, where like, I was chosen. I was not chosen for anything. I think that I had an element of similarity with those beings, kind of like how some of us have a little bit of American, we got a little bit of European, a little bit of Mexican, you know what I mean? You've got all these different races within you. And what I was showed is that they have some definitive concerns about our planet. And let me just mention those, and then I'll stop talking here because I know our time is running short. But
Oh, no, you're doing great.
they were very, very concerned about the mixing of, well, I'll just say it. Somebody's going to get mad. I'm sorry. They're very, very concerned about the way we continue to change our gender. And what they explained was that this is part of a biological manipulation that is taking place, that is attempting to breed out certain reptilian traits that will allow us to connect with different forms of life in the future. And part of that happened through the switching of the genders in this life. It was something that had actually been brought from another world specifically to distort the human genome. And they were like they were very specific. You have 5 generations until it is bred out of the human body. And one of the ways in which they would do it is by, like the gender switching process. And they were actually explaining that was a great manipulation, and that for those of us on Earth that wanted to learn how to integrate with ET, races, that we needed to polarize on a greater level. And by polarize, I mean choose an identity. Males would have been males, females would have been females, you know what I mean? To be more seated within our sense of self and less of a shape-shifting identity, because their idea was that was basically dumbing down our race and making us like able to not only overcome the darkness on our planet and to get rid of certain draconic factions that were here. But anyway, I could go on and on about it. That one always gets a little dicey. Sorry for anyone in the chat who's like, what?
Well, we've discussed it. When Barry comes on the show, we have discussed it, like when it comes to the gender changing topic. And that is, I know it's sensitive to talk about. I know, because you get censored when you talk about it and people have their opinions on it. Okay. But it has been put out into society through celebrities, especially, and the Shaluminati, as I like to call them, like all this kind of stuff where it's, there's been a push for it. And I've been watching these videos too of like a lot of our first ladies might not have been ladies. Okay.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like that.
Right.
I mean, this has been a program. I'm going to say it's a program.
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah.
It's been going on for decades, probably longer than that, because it's royalty, it's politicians, it's celebrities, but okay. So we got those people, but they're also, those same people are the ones that people claim to be like reptilians as well, like the shape-shifting kind. Okay, so I don't know. It's just all very interesting. And that comes down to like the different factions too of like the reptilians as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. By my understanding, there are dozens, and probably a lot more than that. But by my understanding, there are dozens of reptilian beings that are constantly connecting with humans. There's all kinds of other races as well, but that is a very real thing. I also do believe that part of the distortion around some of that comes from what we would call a multi-generational Baphomet cult, for those that are familiar with that word, which is very much about distorting the human genome and kind of creating these what we call reversal grids of energy that basically turn it into the opposite of what it once was. Kind of like, when the viral madness came out and they gave us that injection, so to speak. It was the opposite of what they claimed it to be, right? It's not meant to save your life, it's meant to take your life. Part of the extension of the way that energy works over time is to create these reversal grids of energy. And one of the aspects that you'll see is that there will always be one member of that elitist family that will change sex in childhood. They will often marry or be permanently attached to, a person who has also changed their sex. And don't get that as a wholehearted negative thing. For people that are out there that are going through that biological change in their own way, there's many different forms in which it takes place. But it's just interesting to note that a reptilian race would choose to say, hey, look, you're making yourselves weaker. You're distorting your genome, by doing this. And if you want to learn how to be in contact with different forms of life, you have to stay pure. Just like the concept that I think a lot of people often do not realize, for those that try to have out of body experiences or astral projection, they will, well, honestly, I will say in almost every single case, one of the reasons why that doesn't happen for some people is because you do not root and anchor the human body in this realm through the earth star chakra and the root chakra. And so it's almost like the way out is in, which I know has kind of been well spoken of in a lot of ways. But anyway, I'm just kind of ranting on this now. Sorry. So yeah,
no, you're not just ranting. I mean, it's all connected and it's all important. And it is interesting that, it's like it's the reptilian beings who are actually saying, you need to course correct here, because you're taking a way big detour over here. And if you guys want to get back on track, you need to, as you said, polarize the genders and things like that, back to the way it used to be. I guess, right?
I believe that's very much what it was. And I'm not trying to say for, those of you out there that follow a lot of this stuff, because, like I said at the beginning, I think my experience with a lot of beings I discovered very early on were so different than what other people were selling, like literally selling their experiences. And I'm like, I just, maybe I'm the fake one. Maybe I'm not the real one. Maybe this is just all made up in my mind. But
it's so confusing.
Right. But there had been one thing that I had learned up until that point, because so many strange things had occurred in my life since 2015, that it had brought me into such a new direction, into a new mission stage, that I was like, and I say this all the time now, even if it was an incredible hallucination, where one day I just, tripped out and was like, I met a bunch of reptilians and they want us to get stronger and do, blah, blah, blah. Even if that was a complete hallucination, the effects that it had on my life and the people that I worked with afterward were overwhelmingly positive. In terms of gaining more power, in terms of gaining more clarity, in terms of being able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Demand things from our human world that we were taught that we could not have. Knowledge, abilities, certain things within us, I think, could only have been developed had we have started to, come into greater contact with these beings. And so at the same time, while I will say that, I will also say I am not an advocate of people, joining forces with them, because I think for honestly, most of us on Earth, we are not ready for them. I think there's an incredible amount of ET racism, like that occurs for those beings, and also most of them are incredibly, incredibly negative by nature. That is,
and they look scary too.
Right? Yeah.
They look scary. They look like demons. I mean, like, that's what you would think. Like, we've been told, like, what is Lucifer? He's like a horned demon, horned devil or something. And it's like, or Satan, I guess. And
actually, let me just say this: Lucifer will most often show itself to you as a child. For those of you guys that are out there experiencing that, that's going to be one of the ways in which you know that you've actually encountered the form of Lucifer, because he shows up as a child.
Oh, that's interesting, because a lot of people that do like ghost investigations, they get children's voices and children, like that one picture from the Warrens, that they were in the Amityville horror house and there was that little boy looking out the door, and that house where he was unalive.
I've seen that.
And they were like, that's not him, that's a demon. And I was like, God, that's so sad, so sad.
It is very strange. Well, there is one of the many races that sometimes walk, the earth plane, are known as the Demon Ga, and they actually do take great pride in presenting themselves as literal demons. While they're not actual like demons. That's a whole other concept, to be totally real with you. It's like that's the form in which they show up, as this like demonic looking entity being it's actually a race of reptilians that they're very common tormentors of a lot of people on this planet. They are often not just that race. There's many others, but it's such a strange dual type of nature. It's like you have some of these beings that really want to grow and change, and yet they hold on to their savagery. Because that was one of the things that really threw me off in those initial experiences. I got to watch how they ritually murder, beings in their bloodline. I got to watch how they took great pride in these blood sport games where they would literally use these like tusks and like strange sort of physical weapons to disembowel each other. And I'll just say it's gruesome, because yes, they would also consume the bodies. And I think that for most of us that are still coming into understanding of those things, that can only be viewed as pure evil from an earthbound human's point of view, whereas in other realms and other places, that's like business, man. It's just
Really?
it's business. And it's a wild thing.
Well,
I
it's
could
just
go
like
on and on. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just like we're talking about the crocodile-headed Egyptian god, okay, and Sobek, right? And so we're going back in history. We had the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas too here, and North America, Central America, South America. They didn't they worship, like, was it Quetzalcoatl? I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but he was like a lizard god, right?
Yeah.
And they would sacrifice people.
Serpent. Yeah,
they'd rip people's hearts out. I think the Aztecs actually worshipped him.
Oh man, okay, let me just say this then. Please, tell me if I talk too long. That was actually one of the stages of life that I had incarnated as.
No way.
Yes, absolutely. It was discovered through a QHHT session that I had about 2 years ago now. In which I was given access to the many versions of myself that I had been over time, and I just allowed them to unfold. And one of the early stage incarnation experiences I had as a human on this earth plane was in a form that a lot of people it's very confusing in a lot of ways. Some of the earlier forms in which we'll show up on the earth plane will be as a group, meaning you will be one consciousness, but you will inhabit a group of people or beings or animals or life forms all at the same time, which is very confusing. How can one consciousness be inhabiting an entire tribe of beings? But that's actually what it was. And I had incarnated as a non-physical reptilian being who was actually part of one of the groups from that inner earth society that introduced the humans of that time to the concepts of ritual human sacrifice. We were part of the race that actually helped bring it to this planet, because like I said, for many beings, it sounds gruesome. No, I'm not an advocate of it, you guys. It's just what I've experienced. That was normalcy. That was one of the ways in which they could guarantee these open gateways into other realms. And in the early stages of life cycles that I had, I was shown how we, as those beings, influence people to engage in those things. And even later on, this is the thing I talk about in my book at a lot more length, I actually came back to that place in South America as a member of the Knights Templar in another life. This always sounds so cringe. In another lifetime, I returned to that area of South America with a Knights Templar kind of envoy. And our task was to understand and gather artifacts or what I believe to be objects of power from those beings that had influenced all those tribes to start doing all those things. And what we had discovered during that experience, which was far more visceral than me just kind of knowing that I had existed as a non-physical being, I think it's a lot easier to kind of grab onto the experiences that you've had as a physical being through the many lifetimes. And what I was shown is that we actually went back to that place. I believe it was in Ecuador, if you want to get very, very specific. I might be wrong, but I believe it was in that country. Sorry, I will.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's from Ecuador.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
cool.
yeah. His whole family comes and visits all the time. Yes.
Nice. I
gotta go there one day.
I hope I get to go there.
Yeah.
Like in this lifetime. But what I was shown at that stage of the journey was that we went back to try to confront and discover those beings. And rather than be seen or known, they chose to engage in a ritual that essentially destroyed the entire tribe of humans just to stop us from getting access to the tech that they had. And so it was like a weird roundabout kind of time loop where I had returned to meet the beings that I had once existed as in human form to try to fix something without knowing that's what, we were doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be real for everyone watching, we failed. We did not.
Mission failed. Mission aborted.
Absolute failure. Absolute
That's
failure.
wild.
Anyway,
Okay, I want to connect a couple dots here too. This is so cool that you're telling us this stuff, because part of a lot of these remote viewing targets that I've been given, these blind targets, where a lot of times they're cryptid encounters or something that happens along the lines of like a battlefield or something, because you talked about the blood opens the portals, right? And think about if. Okay, whoever is in charge, whoever they are, right? The controllers that are sending our people into battles at certain places all over the world, inside our country, even during the Civil War as well. 34,000 men died over a period of 3 days in North Georgia at Chickamauga battlefield. Okay, if you don't think they don't they didn't know that. Okay, somebody had prior knowledge of like where to have these battles. I'm convinced of it, because that's where you open the portals. That's why they have battles and wars at certain places, because they need constant bloodshed there. And in these, but to open these portals, and that's why we have so many cryptid encounters out there, because these cryptids are coming in and out of natural portals right there. Absolutely. That's what I think. And I don't know. I don't claim to know everything, because I don't know anything. But that's just with my remote viewing data for a lot of these targets that are in places where there's been a lot of bloodshed. I have gotten data that says the land requires blood over and over again.
Which is a frightening thing, like for some of us, like, what do you mean? And yet honestly, that's been a factor of how it's been on Earth for eons. I mean, it also like extends us into other worlds. The etherization of blood that occurs during that spilling process, which it's both gruesome and it's also fascinating. And don't get it twisted, you guys. I'm not an advocate of such things. I'm merely explaining what I've seen and experienced, but I believe that is definitely real. I think we're going to watch the unfoldment of a number of those other things happening, right now in other areas of, the planet, like, Middle Eastern violence and whatnot, which is a stronghold for a lot of those beings. Absolutely still living underground in those places. And anyway, we could go on and on about it, but
okay. Well, that's something else that I kind of wanted to circle back to, because you had mentioned the underground tunnels in the underground civilization cities under LA. And we touched on that, because Trebles, my guest on Saturday night, was from he lives in LA, South LA. And the riots were going on and stuff. And, and we were talking about the underground lizard people city in Los Angeles. And I had a good friend of mine, who has worked on some very, I don't know how secretive these projects are, but, managing the building, the creation of like underground cities, tunneling for maybe government contracts and stuff. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't asked him I haven't dug into those questions with him yet. Okay. But he sent me a little message. He said, it was a video, and it was of a square mile in downtown LA that had been cordoned off for curfews and things like that. And they were like, it was like the Skid Row district, the fashion district, the art district right there, 1 square mile of a block of blocks. And so he said, people think they're doing this because of the riots, but actually that is the entrance to the underground city that we built back in 1982 to 1984. Yeah. And he wanted me to know that. And he told me, I gave me permission to talk about it on the show and whatever I needed. He sent me pictures and everything.
Oh, cool.
And he said they actually have an entrance there. It's super secret, it's supposed to be. But maybe they're taking supplies in, or I'm not exactly sure what the implications were to that. But just to know there is. And he said that when they were boring the tunnels go all over the world. Okay. But he said that they intersected with some of the ancient lizard people tunnels, basically some of the ancient tunnels and down there. He said there's full cities down there, full cities.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Full cities. Nothing like what we would think. You do a Google search on underground LA, underground, and they show you like muddy, sewer lines and stuff. That's not what it looks like down there.
Oh no, it's
That's
not.
it.
Yeah, not at all. It's like very, very well formed underground tunnels. Some new, some old. Like I had said, there is a stage when we were living there, and we could literally just walk over and look under the fence and be like, "Oh, God. Oh my God!" I don't know what it's like now.
Yeah.
That was like 3 or 4 years ago, but I believe it's real. Absolutely.
That's what they're doing. I mean, there's full civilizations down there. I mean, we've someone had mentioned in the chat earlier about the ant people, and we've got the ant people, we got the lizard people. Of course, if you go back and those tunnels were discovered back in 1934, I believe, by what was that guy's name? Shuffeld or something like that. I can't remember.
Right, right, yeah.
But he was doing some sonar or something. Like he was kind of poking around. I don't know if they were going to build something or if he went looking for it. The Smithsonian is notorious for sending scouts out to look for these ancient sites, and then they find them, and then they just completely cover them all up for entertainment purposes only. YouTube.
Yes. Okay. Yes, exactly.
Right. This is for entertainment purposes only. All of this today is for entertainment purposes only. Okay. But they're notorious for that, and for changing the whole narrative and acting like it never happened.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, no, I'm on board with it. It's literally real, which is, it's one of those things people will come to the understanding of that within their own time when the body and the spirit is ready. For some people, it will always be, this like fearsome thing. And for other people, we'll have the misconception that we're meant to be fighting them or battling them. And honestly, I'll just say this right now. I think one of the ways in which people that are watching the show can develop their intuitive discernment abilities is to be very mindful of what you receive from people when they explain themselves as a heroic being walking other worlds and exercising and tearing apart these beings. Because maybe I was just a weak, fallible human, but the only time that I ever came face to face with a reptilian being, I was absolutely 100% aware that there was not a single thing that I could possibly do. Absolutely not. And I've heard other experiencers that I've met over the years have spoken about it in such a way, and I honestly believe that to be real as well. I think they'll show up in many different forms, but I also don't believe that they really have too much of an agenda to be out there making you addicted and making you watch porn and, making you do weird things. Honestly, when you really look at, I think for those of us that have really been in contact with those beings, they view humans as ants, as like cockroaches. They're not interested in our tendencies. They don't care what we have for breakfast. None of those things matter. It's a different level of power and consciousness that I think only people that have been subjected, whether traumatically or otherwise, to them will be able to view that and go, oh shit, yeah, that's not what anyone said it was. It fundamentally changes you. And so I just say use your judgment, you know what I mean? Like when people are out there saying, I was on Mars battling reptilians and I with this program, and it's like, yeah, maybe in another timeline, in another body, in another form, but not in this one. That's like us, that's almost like a little mouse, like thinking, okay, buddy, I'm going to take you on, and it's like, no, you won't.
Yeah.
You'll just,
I know.
But anyway,
I totally get that. And I've been, okay. So we have whistleblowers like Phil Schneider, let's just say, for instance, who came out, and a lot of, anyone who comes out with real life encounter information, some of them don't end up living very long after they disclose stuff like that. And he was talking about having the alien wars underneath Dulce, and and how he had been shot with some kind of ray gun or laser gun or something, and lost his fingers. And
I believe Phil Schneider. I think he was
me
very
too.
authentic.
Yeah. But you hear about this stuff. It's like we're down in these tunnels fighting reptilians. The military's down there and stuff. And it sounds terrifying. And I've been told by someone who is in the know that it's very real. It's very real. And there's some videos. Like I'm the cryptid huntress. I'm always out there. I got my boots on the ground and I'm going looking for the monsters. Okay. And if you want to call them monsters, they're not all monsters. But anyways, I was out in Myrtle Beach, and on the way home from Myrtle Beach, I didn't stop by Bishopville, but I passed Bishopville, where the lizard man of Scape Swamp is. And
All right, yeah,
and
I've heard of that.
oh yeah, that's a very real thing. Many people encountered the lizard man of Scape Swamp, basically out in Bishopville, and those things are real. A lot of people encounter lizard people. It is not uncommon. And one of my friends who was in the know, he sent me a video one day, or I'd sent him something asking him what that was, and it sounded like what you would imagine like a scary reptilian would sound like almost like a velociraptor or something. And he said, yeah, he said, those are, if you hear that noise, there's nothing you can do about it. You're pretty much dead once you hear that, when they're close enough. Yeah. He was like, there's nothing you can do to stop me. They're going to get you fast, and they're going to just go ahead and eat you, basically.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much. It's like,
there's no fighting it.
Like a sport. It's like a sport for a lot of them. And then, prayerfully, maybe you'll encounter the ones who are past that point where they no longer desire to, eat humans. Which sounds so cringe, but it's like it's really real. It's a crazy thing. We absolutely live in the world in which these things are happening around us, and I think the more we can come into acceptance of the possibility of them, and then use our discernment to unpack and understand which parts of it is relevant, I think is honestly one of the stages that a lot of us sign up for in this life. People that will be watching your show, people that will be taking part in all this stuff. Part of your mission, or one of the choices you made, if you want to call it a soul contract, is to come in contact with these concepts and to unpack them and understand well, is this real? What's not real? What part of this was a story? What part of this happened? And I think that maybe that's one of the roles that I have, is to help people understand maybe from a little bit of a different, perspective. I'm not actually sure, but to real quickly answer a question that was on the screen earlier.
Yes, Andrew.
I do not actively work with any form of reptilian energies. I do not actively work with, at least intentionally, I do not call in any form of ET beings within the sessions I do. I do not connect with ascended masters. I don't call in, okay, reps, let's start working on so and so. Absolutely not. I've never ever been that person. I'm not an advocate of it. I think that when we are involved in that type of work, whether it be for the purpose of healing or activating abilities within us, I believe that the most powerful source of energy is what we would call, let's get ready to cringe, somebody's going to cringe, the power of God as you understand it. Whether it be in the form of something like Jesus Christ or another form of that. Not to say subscribe to world, I can't even say the word religions, you know what I mean? I'm not saying from that, perspective, but really it is the source energy and the energy of our higher self that I think that's honestly what I choose to work with at this stage. And you guys are going to find a lot of people out there. They're going to go, I just call in Archangel Michael. Just call in the 20D, I don't know, Syrians, or what's like the other one that everyone claims. I can't say certain words sometimes. Pleiadians, you know what I mean? Or here, this is the funnest one of all, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be your universal. I'm sorry to say this word, YouTube censors. This is your universal ET experiential bullshit sign. They say, I'm an Andromedan contactee. And you're like, okay, that's a whole galaxy, bro. You're talking, okay, great. You know what I mean? I'm an Earth, contactee. It's like, yeah, of course. These are, I think, in many cases, labels that we will assign to each other with no true understanding of what is actually within those energies. Not to say that I understand them. I'm not coming from a place of superiority, really just experience. And anyway, I will stop there because I'll go on and on about this.
No, the labels are out of control. Yeah, I don't, a lot of people do claim and believe they are star seeds as well. I mean, shoot, you and I met at the Starseed conference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So it is what it is. I mean, I don't know if I'm even from here. You know what I mean? I don't think any of us.
I don't know if any of us are
stardust,
right? No, really.
Stars. Yeah.
We are, if you really want to use that label, which I'm going to compare it to something from decades ago. the starseed label is the same thing as the flower children from the hippie movement of the 1960s. It's
Totally.
it's an associative play social mechanism that we as humans will take part in. Just like, there's a whole society of young people coming up now that have decided they're in a secret space, like thing through really just watching, like YouTube and misinterpreting their own, like, I guess, trauma, really. And I think we all carry elements of that. I think that there is like a timeline in which we've all lived in those realms. And, for some of us that have maybe existed as another form of life on another plane, I think it's going to be easier for you to, understand these things in this life. But anyway, I'm kind of just weaving in and out of like a bunch of different thoughts. I'll stop.
It all makes sense. Listen, we do talk about that quite a bit, and I do bring people who have been part of the secret space programs on the show sometimes. I've even got our Keemra coming on tomorrow. Okay.
He's great. There's a lot of real people. There's also a lot of associative play that goes on, which is very understandable. People need to feel that their experiences and their traumas and the things that they've been through in this life have a greater spiritual meaning. I think that we're just at the stage where there's a lot of negative trends. There's like a over glorification of mental illness. There's an over diagnosis of entity attachments. You know what I mean? Anything that doesn't agree with you right now is obviously a Nazi or a demon, right? I mean, I'm just like, right?
Yes,
that's kind of how
true.
it is. Like,
that's what they say.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's all about labeling. As a remote viewer, we don't like labeling things. Okay.
That's correct.
It's just bad energy or good energy. I don't know, in my opinion. And so I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation today. I did have a couple of more questions from the audience, and if you got a couple of minutes, we'll
I got all day. Go for it. Yeah.
Oh,
please.
Heck yeah!
I'll just say a bunch of like random stuff over and over again.
No, I love that. Well, Jason actually in the beginning, at some point in the middle of the show, he said, "Is there any connection between celebrities with the black eye?" Now, I think what he's referring to is that's the vril parasite. Okay. And so that does have connections to a certain faction of reptilians, I believe, right? Or what is your understanding of that?
That's a good question. I think that within what we call the society of vril beings, what does vril really mean for those of you guys that don't know? Life force energy.
Oh.
It's literally life force energy.
You're louche.
They feed off of life force energy in many different forms. I think that we've seen a couple different versions of the black eye tech. One of those has to do with an actual proboscis of a being that is inserted in what we call the outer canthus of often the left eye, which gets creepy because I actually had an experience in 2018 where something was inserted into my eye.
Oh my gosh.
A whole other can of worms talk. Yeah, for real. It was very visceral. But by my understanding, there's many different forms of how this is done now. And yes, a lot of people call it the process of droning. Another fun one to look up is the phrase sweating the quill is another one that they had mentioned, the process of inserting it. And so in some cases, there's another life form that gets inserted into the body, which sound, for some people that know about this, they're going to be like, yeah, obviously. For others, they're going to be like, what? That's not possible. That does take over your consciousness. But I think what we're seeing with a lot of the elitist groups is actually a form of tech. It's like a thing that they're now using. It used to be a biological form of life, a being that would insert itself into the brainstem and kind of take you over. And while that still occurs, at least from my understanding and what I've viewed in my own world, is that it's actually a form of AI tech that will kind of overwrite pieces of a person's consciousness. It allows for these gateways within the chakra system and other areas of, like the energy body to open on a different level. So to allow people to be manipulated in certain ways, to change aspects of their personality. And so it's both a biological thing and a technological thing at the same time. But I think a lot of the people that you see like in the Black Eye Club are people that have been subjected to the tech version of it. And I'm not saying I know that to be a fact. It's just, I think everyone out there has an ability to read, certain like forms of non-physical energy. And I think you'll come to that understanding in your own way, in time. There's many different ways in which they will like interact with us. And anyway, I'll stop
I
there.
love that. Yeah, no, I mean, I talk about it a good bit, when we bring it. We talked about that on Monday, actually, with the Black Eye Club and
Nice.
and even Daryl James come on the show about a year, or maybe it was 2 years ago. I don't know. I get lost in time. I don't know what day it is.
I know,
but
right?
He
It's
came
like
on
it
a
could be
while
a week
back.
or a year.
Yeah, he came on a while back, and he talked about his experience when he was in the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and I think he was overseas, and he drank too much one night and ended up in a compromising position. I believe they were trying to hold him down. They were going to actually put one of those parasites in his eye, I believe.
Yeah.
And he saw that lizard sitting on the table in the living room.
Oh yeah,
It's like a little gremlin or something.
that's a very real thing. Like I said, I wanted to add this into my book, but I didn't because I think it creates so much weird, imagery. But I mean, that is a thing that happened to me in 2018, literally.
Really?
Being presented itself within an out of body experience. It was like a gigantic eyeball, literally like a worm attached to a gigantic eyeball. I wish I could tell you that it was a horrific thing, but it wasn't. It was honestly, it felt like it had love. It felt like it had incredible, there was just like a welcoming energy that it had. And behind it was standing what I believe to be a group of just knights, Templars from other times and other, ages, like all kind of lined up as if it was some kind of a legion, like standing like in the background. And it's so weird to talk about it, but it shot itself right into the outer corner of my left eye. And as a result of that experience, I actually had a physical change it's still there. I actually went to the eye doctor for it later on, but it like essentially made an opening within my visual field that I thought was me going blind at first. Cause it's like, if I kind of held my left eye just in the right place, I could see this opening of light inside my eye, which is bizarre. And there's a lot of other things that happen along with that, which I won't necessarily get into here, but I actually think it was it was a process of receiving a form of tech that I had been in contact with in other lifetimes and other realms that was intended to assist me in essentially working with certain types of beings, which, there's a lot more I could say on it. You guys can tell I'm editing very like carefully here, but I think it can happen in both the left eye or the right eye. That's why what I've just learned over the years when I intentionally send energy through the left eye, especially in the sessions that I'll do with people, there's a different layer of entrainment that occurs. There's like a different type of like, frequency that will show up. And anyway, I could go on and on, but yeah.
That is fascinating, Matthew. Super fascinating. Someone here said, is he saying, Firehorse says, is he saying he's been vrilled? Okay. And I don't know.
That's a good question. I think it really depends on what you would call vrilled. I think that there's so much misinfo about that. I think that there are a host of many ways in which energies, beings, or things can be inserted into the body to, create changes or to alter our consciousness. I can tell you that I'm not attached to any sort of secret societies or any agencies or anything. So if I did get that, they automatically were like, oh, he's worthless, throw him out of here. I can't even get any, I even in this like soul group, I'm like on the fringes of like everything, no matter how authentic we are. So I'm like, if I did get vrilled by the Illuminati, trust me, it did not go as planned. You know what I mean? Because I don't have a lot of money. I'm not a celebrity, right?
I know. Did your bank account change the next day? That's the question.
Man, I wish.
You get $1 million.
I wish. I'm still waiting for the CIA to show up. Maybe they will one day.
I know, right? Look, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Offer a contract or something. Absolutely. Susan has an interesting question too. She says, "Is the vril procedure related to the toad throat?" That is so funny. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but it's funny because I remember those videos of like Katy Perry putting, and she's a singer, and I know singers, you have to be able to hold air in your lungs really well. And even people who play musical instruments as well, they keep their air in their cheeks, and some, I guess, go into their throat. but that she's got videos where her throat is like expanding like a toad.
Oh yeah.
And so Susan says, is the real procedure related to the toad throat we've started to see in some elites like Katy Perry and the CEO, that Albert guy? I know what you're talking about, Susan.
Good question.
Yeah.
I think Louis Armstrong, who was a musical artist from the 1960s or something, also had that where his throat would sort of like puff up really big. I'll be real, Susan Donahue, I actually do not know. I have no idea. I think that maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think that we're going to continue to see a number of strange signs and like, you know, just layers of energy upon the bodies of those who are in those places in our society. And I think one of the smartest things we can do is simply watch it and observe it and take in every piece of data. And the more that we do that without casting a judgment upon it, I think the more we're going to be given the relevant pieces of truth in terms of why does this happen to people? Why are they like this? What are the effects? And so it could very well be, but I'm very open about, like, I'm not a know-it-all within this stuff. There's some things where I will be like, yes, absolutely. But honestly, it could be that, it could be something else. So
it could be, and that it's a wonderful observation. But I did preface that by saying, you know, she is a singer. You know, I don't know about the CEO guy. He probably isn't a singer, but I know, you know, some people are actually being seen with like it looks like gills on the side of their faces. I think Bill Clinton was one of them. But like they get these like indentions on their faces, and it looks very reptilian, very ET, extraterrestrial looking. So who knows?
I mean, there is a process by which some beings, when they are closely mated into the human body, inserted or otherwise, you will begin to take on the physical appearance of those. It does happen. Look at Celine Dion now. Look at what she has turned into. It's like this crazy haggard type of being. Cher is another one. You guys go out there, look up Cher 2025. You'll be like, what are you? You know,
I mean? And not to mention, we talked about the gender transfer or whatever, like the opposites, and there may be some of that in play as well. I don't know.
I think that's also a big aspect of it, which you know, there's a lot of opinions on how that goes, you know, but I
don't know nothing about nothing. And yes, Dottie, thank you. We will both admit that we don't know nothing about nothing. Okay?
Right? You will learn enough to know that you don't know what you don't know, and it's like,
exactly. That's how I know when I'm talking to a wise person. They know they don't know. Okay. And we're just putting some ideas out there in our experiences. And I love that. That's why we have the best conversations. That's why we have the best chat on the internet. And Barry, I was just about to get to that one, Barry. Don't worry. I was going to leave the conversation tonight or today. It's actually the middle of the afternoon. So Barry Littleton was wondering if you would talk about your melanin dominant ET experience.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning
Let's hear about it.
So this is actually the system through which I came to understand how to do energy work, through the modality that I use in the work that I do on a daily basis with people, which is essentially opening up gateways and dilating organs, pathways, meridians, chakras within the body. And that came about through an experience I had in December of 2019, where it's talked heavily about in my book for those that want to read the whole story. But I had an instantaneous out-of-body experience on an afternoon sitting in a psychic shop in greater Los Angeles, California, once again out there in LA, where I just did like a meditation on my lunch break one day. I closed my eyes, and just like with the reptilian being, which happened a couple of years after that, or a year later, it was like I closed my eyes and then I opened them again, just instantly, just like that. And when I opened them, I was in what I believe to be an outdoor area. The first thing I noticed was that the ground was very red, similar to Sedona or maybe some places in Africa. And as I brought my head up and looked in front of me, there were three incredibly tall, very muscular, very wiry, very dark-skinned, kind of melanin dominant, if you want to use that term, African-looking men. And I believe that one of them had reverse leg joints, which is a thing I always mention because it's the only time I've ever perceived such a thing in this world. But almost like his knees went backward instead of forward.
Yeah.
But he was with these two other beings, and they were standing there doing this dance, and they were like you know, like moving around and breathing, and I could see like dust kicking up around them, and I just stood there going like, what is happening? And they got in a line, these men got in a line, and they walked up, and the first two took their hands and they put them over my body like they were building a wall, like literally right in front of me. They did this thing from head all the way down to the backs of my feet, and it's like they put this wall over my body in this sort of makeshift kind of way where they just held their hands. And then the third one came around, and as he came up to me, he went and he blew some dust in like into my face. And in that, yeah, absolutely, in that moment I was immediately transported into an indoor dwelling place, a very earthen, kind of like a hut or like an igloo, or I don't know, maybe even a cave, although I could see light coming from outside, so I'm going to assume that it was not a cave. And to my right was a child version of that race, and it was this child that was laying upon, this is a really easy one for, you know, people to get a visual on. It was laying on a stone tablet, or like a table, like in, you know, just this area within this hut. And as I, you know, turned my head to look at it, I could see that on the head of this child there was a huge crack, like this glowing kind of moving kind of crack of energy that was just going like pulsating in its in a very strange way. And, you know, once again, just like with the reptilian thing, I did not actively choose to do this. It's important to mention that it was not a choice that I made, but I watched myself walk over to this child on this table and hold my hand above its head and gently lift my hand up. And as I did so, this glowing type of energy came out of this child's head. And at the same time, there was a sound that was let out. It was like a bell. It was like a howl. It was like a chime. It was like a tone, like this ooh sound. I don't know if that'll even show up on the mic. And I watched myself hold this big thing. I call it like a glowing slug, which makes it sound silly. But honestly, it was literally, you guys, like this weird glowing metallic slug that I watched myself pull out of this child in that space and hold it up toward the ceiling. And the sound came out and it just disappeared. And that, to me, was them showing me something that I had done in another life or in another realm. It was like they gave me a sample of something. And as soon as that occurred, I began, you know, the human mind kicked in, and I'm like, what's going on? What is this? What is this? And boom, snap, I was right back in that outdoor place. And this time it was the same three kind of shamanic beings that were, you know, doing this dance in front of me, only it was much greater. And it's almost like I could do the dance. They would like put their hands back and forth and in and out and like do this thing. And as I just sat there watching them, they formed what I believe to be a orb of light within their hands. And these three men stood in a triangle and they passed it back and forth to each other. They would pass it back and forth. In that moment, once again, the human mind kicks in and I'm like, what's happening? What is this? And they turned all at the same time, faced me, and took that orb and went wham, and like shot it into my body, right into my chest, right into what I believe to be the heart area, literally right here. And what I was able to view it in that moment was the orb of light broke into, I don't know, 1,000, 1,000,000, doesn't matter how many other little tiny orbs of light. And I was shown that they lined the sides of the helix of the DNA structures in my body. It was like a direct image that I saw in that moment. And all these little orbs went just like lights on like a Christmas tree. They went ding, 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 all around this DNA helix thing. And I mean, there was a bunch of other things that happened. I encountered them later on, and they gave me a literal language, which I use within the sessions that I do to this very day. To this very day, fragments of a language that existed on Earth, and they had a profound effect on me. I mean, there's a number of things that happened after that. We don't have to get into all of them, but it was the opening of my ability to learn how to clear toxic or difficult energies from people's bodies. And later on, it became a literal sound and a phrasing and this language that we use. And here's the kicker about it. I was very sensitive about it for a long time. I didn't want to talk about it on shows and stuff. I would use it in every session I've ever done with people. Anyone out there that's done a private session with me has probably heard me, using these certain phrases or like mantras, I guess we could say. But they essentially gave me fragments of a language, and come to find out about 2-3 years later that I was talking about them on our YouTube channel, and somebody left a comment in the chat, and they were like, I have not heard that word in a long time. It's from, my native language, which was called Shona, which is used in Zimbabwe. And some of the words were actually pieces of a real Earth language. And honestly, it brought me to tears. I sat there and read that comment and was like, oh God.
Wow.
Like, oh, it wasn't actually made up. They were fragments of a language that I had never heard in my life. And the function of them, what I had received from these beings, was very specific. It creates dilation of energy centers, dilation of energies around our organs. And I think that it was just one of the many tools that was available to people out there. But the last thing I'll say on it is that it wasn't a class. It wasn't an activation. It wasn't this shamanic ritual or like an initiation that got me started with working with those energies and those phrases. The real truth is, you guys, I had an out-of-body ET experience. And when I came back, I merely mimicked what I heard. I just started going, oh, you mean like I had in that one experience? And I would make sounds into people's bodies, and I would say the words that I had heard within those experiences. And what I noticed is that when I did, things would happen, like really things would happen. So much so that here we are almost 8 years later, and now we're teaching other people to use the same system. So, who knows where it came from, but I believe that they're one of the many races that continues to work with people on this earth plane. And when we talk about, good, bad, light, dark, neutral, I believe they are purely neutral. And that I think that a lot of other people are going to be visiting with them in the future. There's been some secret space aficionados that have claimed to be in, contact with them as well. Who knows? Maybe it is, but it's a very wild thing. So anyway, that's the super short version of that. Thanks for asking, Barry. There's so much more I could say, but yeah. She might be frozen, or maybe I'm frozen. I'm not sure. Let us know if we're still connected. Hopefully it's working. I don't want to have too much dead air here, so maybe we're glitching. I'll give it just a second. Oh, cool. I guess it's just me. So if we're still live, I'll try to take some questions from the chat. We might have lost Jessica. That's okay. She's glitching out. It's okay, guys. I do see a couple questions, which as we're waiting for her to come back, we can maybe take a question before we bounce. There we go.
Matthew, that was weird. My entire computer just went black. It has never done that before. And it's full of power and everything. That is the first time it's not the first time I've ever had a bad glitch like that, but this computer this is a brand new computer.
Yeah.
And this is you know what it was? I was actually getting ready to kind of compliment what you were saying with one of my experiences. And then it all shut down, and I was like, well, maybe I should tell you in private.
Maybe, because honestly,
I guess
that'll happen. That also happened in my case.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I left you hanging. Thank goodness.
No, I don't mind at all.
It came right back on.
I can literally
you got your own YouTube channel,
I'll
that was wild.
Anyway.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll talk after the show. How about that? Because I have something really interesting that happened as well. So this is a wonderful place for us to kind of to wrap it up today, I guess. And that was my sign right there.
I feel you. Every now and then it'll be like,
that was just wild. I've definitely had like my internet, have problems and like cut out before, but this was the entire computer went completely black.
Well, honestly, usually that's a sign. I'm just gonna say this since we already had like the big, glitch moment. That is a sign, I have been told, when certain agencies will tap into your feed directly. And honestly, to me, it feels like the NSA, but I have a lot of respect for the NSA. So I don't say that in a negative way. I've literally had people from the NSA book sessions with me, like literally. And I'm like, I have a weird respect for those organizations. So, maybe they tapped in for a second and they were like,
there was something. Well, it was, I've been pushing the envelope a lot with all of my shows lately, with the topics that we're getting into, and
that's cool.
And and I can tell where I'm getting more glitches, and even somebody made a comment about the commercials that play, because I have mine set on like, because I do monetize my YouTube channel, and so I put a lot of work into these shows, y'all. Okay,
Yeah.
and so but I have it on moderate, so it's like there's not too many commercials. Hopefully, it's all up to YouTube, y'all. Okay, but some people will say, they'll tell me like, well, there's more when you're talking about hot topics like we're talking about today. And it's almost like to discourage people from watching.
Oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very real thing. I will try to speak about certain things. You guys will know when it's like happening in my case, because I'll be like
Yeah.
like I just can't talk. Like somebody will go,
Can't spit it out.
Say anything. But anyway,
That's right.
it could be a bunch of other things, but yeah.
That's me too. You can tell when I start, I get a brain fart. I mean, I used to brain fart. That's not a word. When I have a senior moment, I've started taking that as a sign to like, it's my higher self, or it's usually, I say it's my higher self stopping me from saying what I was about to say, because it's going to get me in trouble. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's why, I take it as, I don't take it as like being embarrassed about it anymore. I just say it's a senior moment or a brain fart.
Okay. I think I qualify for having those. I'll be 50 soon. So I'm like, is that the stage where you maybe am I getting there? Maybe. So
I'm right there. I'm right behind you. I'm right there with you. We're probably about the same age. Okay.
Probably.
Not to disclose my exact age, but I will be.
I'm getting up there. Yeah. I went to high school in the 1990s, you guys. So
I graduated in the 90s.
Right? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Be gentle.
Did you just high five me? Did you just high five digitally?
Yeah.
Energetic high fives.
I was born in a whole other century, you guys. Okay, I'm sorry.
Me too.
I don't even know how to use TikTok. I swear to God. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Actually, my younger sister, who's only 3 years younger than me, she's gotten off of all the social media except for TikTok. And she was like, Jessica, she's like, all the old folks are on Instagram and Facebook. That's what she said. I was like, but that's what I'm on. She goes, exactly.
It is. It's all like generation X now.
I know, it's fine. When I get on TikTok, I can't focus because it's too much. It's too much information, and I can't. It's too much. So I have a longer attention span, I guess, than most people, and so I don't like the quick. Anyways, I'm not going to complain about how old I am, Matthew. Okay, because I am getting old. I know. Right. Gosh. Yeah. This has been fun. I hope that you'll come back and hang out with me again.
Absolutely, anytime. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know.
And I'd love for Norrin to come on sometime too. She's amazing.
I'm trying to get her to do any shows. Some people will know. Some people will know.
Oh, she doesn't do any shows. Yeah.
She's a very, very particular type of being. She might show up in a different form. I'll put it that way. She might show up in a different form.
Okay.
which could mean many things, right? But yeah.
Oh yeah, she's amazing, and I can't wait to see you guys down in Florida.
Oh yeah, we will be
about
there.
2 weeks.
For those of you guys that are in the chat, if you would like to join us, please head over to, what is it? Full Disclosure
Now conference. Here's a flyer.
Yep, there it is. We're going to be there. There's going to be a bunch of other really cool people there. I will be speaking somewhere, I don't know where, probably the smallest room in the darkest corner usually is where they put me, which is honestly probably perfect. But you guys can still get tickets to this. You can still show up. It will probably change your life in a way that doesn't make sense right now. I mean that sincerely. Every time you go to one of these events, you're going to meet people that you felt like you've known for your entire life that you met 5 seconds ago. And it's because most of us have, done this time and time again. And I think Brian did a really good job of grabbing a wide, swath of people from all across many different, experiencers and psychics and weirdos like me and researchers, It's so, I would love to see you guys there. If you can make it out to St. Petersburg, Florida, we're less than a month. So
yeah, it's only a couple of weeks. And Brian hit me up last night about getting my room and everything. I haven't even gotten all that, y'all. I'm terrible.
Rooms are almost gone, guys. So if you're going to get a room there, do it now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, do it sooner than later. Don't do as I do as I say. Okay. Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, Matthew, how can everybody get in touch with you? Tell everybody about your YouTube channel. And I know Maureen and all my moderators have been putting your links, your books,
thank you for
everything
that.
in the chat, all your courses that you offer. All the links are in the live chat today.
Yeah,
But
thank
if
you,
you'll tell
mods. I
everybody.
mean that very, very sincerely. You guys are very active.
They are. I told you I have like the best chat. I have the best chat
no,
ever.
you absolutely do. I have been here a number of times to see it. But yeah, you guys can find me at rememberyourmission.com. What I do through that little portal is many different forms of intuitive readings, energy clearings. Really, the theme for 2025 has been mentorship and classes and helping people learn within their own ways how to use the many gifts and abilities that we have in this life, which are native to you. Everyone has them. And so whether it be through readings or energy clearings, or honestly, I would say the third most common thing is it's almost like a form of psychic therapy that I do with people, which will sound even more cringe to some people, but it's literally the only work that I do in this life. You can find us at Remember Your Mission. My wife does the same work. She's there alongside me at many, many different intervals in this. And so you can find us there if you want to book a session. You can also head over to our YouTube channel, which is a really good example of a dying YouTube channel. We have so many, it's just, we're so suppressed. It doesn't matter what I do. They won't let me go past the stage that we're at. But we do lives over there. I haven't done one in like a month or two just because I've been doing this class and all kinds of other wild stuff going on. But you can find us on YouTube at Remember Your Mission. And then lastly, we do a monthly reading group and energy clearing process at Patreon. We are 5 years going strong. Which is wild because eventually I'll miss 1 month or something will go down and I'll break, the streak. But we've been doing this every month for literally 5 years. And so you can find us on Patreon. If you want to start to get acclimated to, I think, what I call genuine psychic work that is not performative, that is not meant to, blow you away and really more meant to bring healing and understanding and purpose into your life. Like I said, we do a monthly group there. It's been going every month. You can find us at the Blue Flame Collective on Patreon. And actually our next meeting is this Saturday. So
oh, wonderful
meetings for everybody that shows up. But yeah, those are the places where you can find this. And yeah, thank you for letting me talk at you for 2 hours.
Oh no, this is wonderful. I enjoyed this immensely. I really did. And I really do. I would love for you to come back again, and we'll get into some more of this, and we can even talk about remote viewing and psychic work and all that kind of stuff as well. Of course, I have been on a reptilian kick lately. And I just loved having you on to talk about that. And I did want to say, I saw somebody in the chat had mentioned somebody's name. I had a fellow on the show a couple of years ago who claimed that he was a reptilian. And let's just say, well, he said he was, and I believe him. I believe he believes he is. But gosh, he ended up like coming at me, Matthew. Okay.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't so nice to me. I didn't do anything.
He was probably real then. Yeah.
He was probably real.
They will do that. They will want to fight you just because they can.
Yeah.
That's
no empathy there. I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Blast me all over social media because I didn't get back to you. Okay, fine.
Oh, I know exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. And in that case,
he come after you too? He come after everybody.
There's there's some authenticity there, and I'll just say it. There's a lot of mental illness as well. But anyway, that's a whole other can of worms.
That's true too, y'all. Okay, but anyways, I thought, maybe it's just because he is an authentic one. I'm not going to say his name. It was in the chat earlier. But maybe, and I thought, well, maybe that is, and maybe there's something about me that that the reptilians don't like. I don't know. But anyways, at least we can clear all that up today. And or not clear anything up, because I just still don't know. I don't know nothing about nothing. Okay. Yeah. Look, Jane says, oh, there are people in the chat know who it is. Okay, we're gonna leave it right there at that. Yeah. I'm not here to call people out, y'all. I'm not. But it was just, when you come at me on social media, eventually I do bite back. Okay, I will.
I think it's important to. You have to be able to. Like we're being taught to, always hold this like love and light. Everything's okay. Turn the other cheek. That was one thing that changed for me in the contact with these beings. They were like, no, that is not how it works. You learn to draw boundaries. You learn to say no when it's time to say no. And if you want to call that an evil reptilian trait, well, then you know what? I guess it is exactly what it is, because I think it helps people find elements of power and strength, within themselves. And if you're looking at the way things are going on Earth right now, I think every one of us can agree that we need a lot more of that sovereignty in some way. Anyway, I realize
we do. No,
Shut up.
you're right. No, you're right. I don't get to talk about this very often because I always try to, I have my hunt club where I talk about everyday life stuff, and I throw it out there and I let people know how I feel there because it's my members only thing, and and I feel like I can speak a little more freely. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and so, but it's good to just know, like, I mean, because I do get we get a lot of heat being public. Okay. And people, we're just out here just minding our own business. And when things like that happen, yes, I mean, I may not bite back immediately, but when the time is right, I'll strike.
Exactly. There
Okay.
you go.
I'll come at you, bro. Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't say his name. But anyways, Matthew, thank you so much for being here. You guys go over to the Blue Flame Collective over on Patreon, and please subscribe over there, and subscribe to Remember Your Mission on YouTube, and buy your book. My goodness, you said you can get it on Amazon. It's called Remember Your Mission.
Yeah, remember your mission. What if you're not crazy? What if you're psychic?
Oh my gosh, that's me. That's me.
Right?
I'm a little crazy.
Me as well.
I'm a little crazy. Yeah, we gotta be. But anyways, thank you so much for being here, Matthew. You are the best. Please give your wife my love, and I will see you guys in about 2.5 weeks, something like that, down in Florida. All right. Well, you guys, thank y'all so much for being here today. For all my chat, for everybody, all my moderators for being here. You guys are the coolest. And I want to thank Maureen for the super sticker today. Thank you and Gus. Y'all are the sweetest. And we'll see you guys down in Florida too. Down in where are we going? St. Petersburg, St. Pete. And we'll see y'all down there. And you guys, please come back and see me tomorrow night. I do have Arkeem Ra. I don't know what these targets are yet that he's given me. I have 2 targets, and he's going to tell me what those are later today. And then we'll set the show up, and I'll see y'all back here at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night with Arkeem Ra. It's going to be a good one. And y'all, send all the birthday wishes to Barry Littleton. Tomorrow is his actual birthday, Barry. Happy birthday, Barry.
Yeah.
We love you over here. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day, wonderful night. Matthew, have a wonderful day. And I will see you guys again here tomorrow night. All right. Y'all stay safe out there. Don't live in fear. And watch for when people's eyes turn into slits. Okay. I'm just kidding. All right. See you, Matthew. Bye, y'all.